On the seventh Sunday of the season, we call to mind the purposes section of the proposed revision of the Unitarian Universalist bylaws, which says, the purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love.
Good morning. Please rise as you are able and join in singing number 51 in the gray hymnal, Lady of the Season's Laughter. Lady of the season's laughter, in the summer won't be near. When the winter follows after, teach our spirit not to fear. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning Sister of the evening starlight, in the falling shadows stay. Here among us till the far light of tomorrow's dawning ray. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning day. Mother of the generations, whose love all life is worth, everlasting celebrations bring our labors safe to birth. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning earth. Goddess of all time's progression, stand with us when we engage, hands and hearts to end oppression, writing history's fairer page. Hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning age.
Good morning, I'm Bill Brock, he, him, your celebrant this morning.
And I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, Zir or he, him, interim minister.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Our building is located on land that has been home to various peoples in the last 12,000 years, including at the beginning of European encroachment, the Iowa, Sauk, and Meskwaki. These lands were also once home, in much greater number, to the now endangered Least Tern. As we enter this space, the ghosts of humans and other animals past are among us. Let us recommit to understanding the history of the land it occupies and to owning our part in the work of education, reparation, and healing for all species.
Our purpose is to associate together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, hoping thereby to prove helpful one to another and to promote truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
This bond of union is reiterated in our mission to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, and love radically.
It's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true, and you don't have to go it alone.
Today is the 7th Sunday of winter. The moon is waning crescent and will be new on Friday. On the pagan calendar, Thursday, February 1st, was Imbolc. Imbolc celebrates the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. The actual midpoint this year is this morning at 10:17 a.m. Accordingly, we will be having an Imbolc observance today.
Congratulations to everyone for making it through another Groundhog Day, which was Friday. Punxsutawney Phil, according to his handlers, did not see his shadow. And on the Christian liturgical calendar, today is the 5th of 6 Sundays of ordinary time in between Epiphany and Lent, which begins on Ash Wednesday, February 14, which is also Valentine's Day. Beginning of Lenten renunciation or the sensual delights of romantic love. Perhaps we should call it Cognitive Dissonance Day.
A special welcome to our visitors. If you are here with children, feel free to keep them seated with you or utilize our play area in the back. Newcomers are invited to a UU Curiosity Conversation on the first Sunday of every month. The next one, therefore, is today, after the service. Finally, please do make sure your mics are muted throughout the service.
Our connection circles are groups that gather to explore the monthly theme and build relationship. It's a key way that we live out and live into our mission to grow ethically and spiritually. If you're not in one, please sign up and become a part of a group. Not too late to join. Our theme for the month of February is equity. Issues of connecting are available just outside the doors. We begin with the lighting of our chalice.
Please say with me the chalice lighting words in your order of service. Today, we come together as a community of faith, joyful and free, drawing strength from each other to spark the flame of truth and ignite the fire of commitment to social justice, equity, and peace. Join now in our sung invocation. Words are in the order of service.
Turn it over to our Sacred Bridges Cups group for an Imbolc observance.
I invite you all to a place of calm and peace. Hear our words and join us in the energy that we center us in. Elements of the air, connections of intuition and wisdom and learning. Join as we breathe in that energy, ground us in that power. Hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome.
Spirits of fire, fire of inspiration, fire of creation, fire of the awakening earth. We ask that you join us as we spark that energy, as we join together in the collective flame. Hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome.
Water, you flow around us and through us, our lifeblood and emotions, gentle rains, raging torrents, and underground springs, healing waters of Bridget's holy well. We honor your presence with us in this rite. Hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome.
The power of the earth trying so hard to unfreeze itself from winter's grasp as the sun gets a little stronger every day for this, latitude. We welcome you as the earth unfreezes and the raw materials of the stuffs of our bones, of our plants, of our bread, of everything that makes us up, of the things which build our homes and our hearts. We bid you hail and welcome.
Hail and welcome. Thy earth, water, fire, and air, the circle is cast. We are in light. We are bound. We are together. May you find peace and connection to all that is you, all that is divine, and all that we are. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
Good morning. So in the Catholic calendar, today is, depending on the calendar you're using, my ancestors were not using the calendar we're using now, so give or take a few days, is the Feast of St. Bridget, who's the patron saint of Ireland. But before she was a saint, she had a gig as a goddess. So she is what we call a syncretized goddess, which is what happens when two religions collide. And as in the case of most of the old gods of Ireland, they have become heroes and folk figures. We celebrate the goddess Bridget at this time. She's also called Breed or Bride, from which derives our English word bride. She was the daughter of the Dagda, which means that she's one of the Tuath Danann, which is the sort of primordial deities of Ireland. It is said that when she was born, a column of fire shot from the top of her head into the heavens, and it looked like the house was on fire. And she is still known as the Lady of the Sacred Flame. She is a triple goddess, and not in sort of the Maiden Mother Crone Wiccan sense, but in the sense that she had three aspects that were all named Bridget, which is unusual in Irish triple goddesses, but she is the goddess of healing and midwifery, of smithcraft, and of poetry. What these things all have in common is that they take sort of the raw materials and put them through an alchemical process to produce something else. So she is the goddess of transforming things, whether it is the iron at the forge, whether it is the cream into the butter, as we did at our ritual yesterday, whether it is the raw materials of biological life into humanity, or of inspiration into words and music. She's often associated with the idea of imbas, which means fire in the head, and it is the name of poetic inspiration in the Celtic tradition. She's the patron saint of wells. There are many, many sacred wells throughout Ireland that were at one point dedicated to her. And even now, her shrine at Kildare has a sacred well and an everlasting flame, which was upkept by 19 virgins for a long time in her name. Then it was extinguished for a long time in the coming of Christianity, but now it is dedicated to Saint Bridget, who in the Christian tradition is thought to be the foster mother of Christ. We don't know if she was a real woman or not, but she has taken on aspects of the goddess, and that has sort of been a recursive process. So she is the person, the goddess to speak to when we are looking for inspiration to grow, to birth something new. And her feast happening on Imbolc, also, we're in an agricultural community here, right? So this is when sheep decide to start birthing, and they are like notoriously difficult. They need help a lot. So they're often the first animals to birth after winter. So anything sort of wool related and sheep related and midwifery related is part of this holiday. And as a result of that, as well, I have friends who are like, Imbolc, that's the milk holiday, right? Like, yeah, it's the milk and cheese holiday. The red one's in the fall. See, exactly, that's a beautiful invocation. And I tend to work with Bridget as a writer and a scholar. I believe that it is her inspiration that keeps me going, and sometimes people tell me I'm funny. So I'm hoping that I'm in the tradition of those great bards, and in bringing together that tradition with what we are doing now in a practical context, because most of us don't have sacred wells and sacred flames in our backyard, and I don't have sheep in my backyard, we can still celebrate these pieces of her lore in a modern context.
The other aspect during what we celebrate during the Wheel of the Year is we talk about what we do for planning. Imbolc is a holiday where you've experienced the energy of the light coming back at the solstice in winter, and now you can plant the ideas for your plan for the year. So that's all. So we relate to that with nature, because maybe not in Iowa, of course, but you start to see the seeds and the buds on the trees this time of year in the majority of the year. And this is when you start understanding where your plans for the year come into play. So we encourage everyone in that energy to take this time of year to form your plan, give it its life, watch it flourish, so that you can build towards that springtime where you start to see the flower of your creation in your mind and your heart and your soul. So thank you for spending this time with us.
I know. Elements of earth, as you unfreeze yourself and slowly make your way back into all of existence, we bid you thank you for being here. We wish you well and journey. We wish you well on your journey back into everything as the world tries to wake back up from the winter. We bid you hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell.
Healing water, we thank you for your presence around us and within us, now and always. Hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell.
Inspiring creative fire, thank you for your presence with us and within us today. As always, we are grateful for your gifts. Hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell. Air that we breathe, all that is part of us that keeps us flowing. Thank you for giving us wisdom and learning, and guide us on our path throughout the rest of this week and this month. Hail and farewell. Hail and farewell. The circle is open.
But not unbroken.
May you be at peace.
May you be blessed.
May you find your way. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I am your faith formation and congregational life coordinator. This morning's story is an adaptation of a story by Leo Leone called A Color of His Own. This month we're exploring equity, which, as we'll see in our stories this month, one way that looks is practicing equity is a way of honoring and uplifting everyone's worth and dignity. When we practice equity, that is how we bring those values into life. And so as you listen to this story, pay attention to that message This is what our children will be exploring in class today and throughout this month. Parrots are green.
Many of them.
Goldfish are red.
Aren't they gold?
Elephants are gray.
Absolutely.
Pigs are pink.
Pinkish.
All animals have a color of their own, except for chameleons. They change color wherever they go. On lemons, they are yellow. In the heather, they are purple.
Heather is purple?
The blossoms are usually lavenderish purple.
Okay.
And on a tiger, a chameleon would be striped like a tiger.
Now hold on. Different parts of them respond differently to the color nearest to that part of their body?
Meredith, can I let you in on a secret?
Yeah?
This is a metaphor.
Oh. You mean, like, even though it presents as a story about chameleons, it's really a story about
Us.
And, like, about the great lengths to which we can sometimes go to be the color that our environment seems to want us to be.
I think the story does need to be heard on more than one level.
Gotcha. Please continue.
One day, a chameleon who was sitting next to a tiger's tail said to itself, "If I remain on a leaf, I shall be green forever, and so I will have a color of my own."
A color of one's own. That would be a metaphor for...
Let's see if you can figure it out. So with this thought that he would stay on that leaf, the chameleon cheerfully climbed into the greenest leaf it could find.
What could go wrong?
But in the autumn, the leaf turned yellow, and so did the chameleon.
Uh-huh.
Later, then, in the fall, that leaf turned red, and the chameleon also turned red.
Yep.
And when the winter winds blew the leaf from the branch, and with it the chameleon was black in the long winter night.
Black at night? I guess that would have happened even back in the summer.
But when the spring came, he walked out into the green grass, and there he met another chameleon.
A friend!
He told his sad story. "Won't we ever have a color of our own?" he asked. "I'm afraid not," said the other, older, wiser chameleon. "But," he added, "why don't we stay together, you and I? We will change color wherever we go. That won't change, but we will always be alike." And so they remained side by side. They were green together, they were purple together, they were yellow together, and red with white polka dots.
Red with white polka dots?
Like the tops of certain kinds of mushrooms.
So it's okay to change color,
It's okay to adapt to what's going on around us.
but it's good to have a friend who understands our changes and goes through them with us. So in the end, he doesn't have to have a color of his own.
But the two of them each have each other to share all of their colors. And so they lived happily ever after. Please join me in singing our children out to their class with the song, the Children's Benediction, printed in your order of service.
Go in joy, go in peace to greet the day. With open hearts embrace life's wonder. We will guide you, we will love you on your way.
Good morning. Do you like brunch? Please raise your hands if you like brunch. Do you like supporting the care of transgender and non-binary members of our community? Say yes and raise your hand. Yes. Do I have something for you? Next Sunday, we will be having brunch here at church to support our Faith in Action partner, the Iowa Trans Mutual Aid Fund. All money that is received by the fund goes to provide needed medical care for transgender and non-binary members of Central Iowa, well, maybe all of Iowa, every dollar. So we decided doing a fundraiser would be a great way to help support them in addition to the ways that you all are already contributing. We will have wonderful food made by members of the congregation. It's a free will donation, and we will ask you to be as generous as you can be. So see you next Sunday.
Good morning. I'm Ann Mowry, a member of Pastoral Care Team, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. We are a community of memory and hope, a community of hands and hearts. We gather to share our laughter and our tears, and to bear witness to one another as we journey through sorrows and joys. We have one joy this morning. Marilyn Lance and David Racy became the grandparents of twin girls on Friday. Their daughter, Erica Racy, I don't know that's her last name now, but Erica Racy grew up in this church. Those twin girls are going to be living with Marilyn and David for a while, along with a very rambunctious dog. So that may be a worry. If you could use pastoral attention yourself or contact information for someone else, speak to me or another member of the pastoral care team or email pastoralcareteam@ucdsm.org. Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May we not look away when we're needed. May the grieving be comforted, the weary find rest, the broken places healed, and joy and laughter abundant. We light 3 candles, one for the joys and sorrows shared aloud, one for those shared in writing, and for those held silently among us.
Dear source of healing and wholeness that we call by many names, may there be compassion. May there be forgiveness. May we find a path to forgive those who have wronged us. May we find a path to deserve forgiveness from those we have wronged. We may be distant from the actual events, but the news seems to settle at our kitchen tables, on the radio, while driving down the road, the nightly news on the living room TV, the newspaper on the doorstep, the 24/7 internet news feed. And we acknowledge those who work as journalists for their courage to stand in each moment, gathering facts, running the cameras and sounds, transmitting reports to the news agencies that then assemble the stories that are filtered and flow to us. The Committee to Protect Journalists reports this week that in the Israel-Gaza war, 85 journalists and media workers are confirmed dead, 78 Palestinian, 4 Israeli, and 3 Lebanese. We hold in our hearts the 16 reported injured, the 3 missing, and the 25 journalists reported arrested. Let our hearts honor the courage and integrity of those who offer their life in courage and integrity to tell the stories. We are grateful that Hungary dropped its opposition to European Union support for Ukraine, allowing approval of a $54 billion aid package. We hope U.S. support for Ukraine, stymied for now, can be worked out. Russia and Ukraine, in the meantime, have swapped over 200 prisoners of war each. We hope for dialogue that opens a way toward a ceasefire. In Gaza, over 500,000 people are starving, the UN says. Yet funds are being frozen for UN refugee assistance. Reports out of Jordan tell of a drone strike killing 3 U.S. soldiers and wounding over 40 who were supporting the U.S. presence in Syria. And Iran-backed militia in Iraq has been identified as the perpetrator of the attack, and the U.S. has retaliated. Was it proportional? Will it deter further violence or fuel escalation of violence? We pray that it will serve to deter, while acknowledging that we do not know. There is such great suffering. And though it is not directly our suffering, we feel it. It is ours. May there be help for those in need. May the killing cease. May there be compassion. May there be forgiveness. And we ask of ourselves the mindful intention to delight in what is good, to confront what is cruel, to heal what is broken. For what has been said and for all that we carry this morning on our hearts, we observe a minute of silence.
Our Connection Circle topic for this month is equity. My first experience with the concept of equity on a broader scale came as a child, though I surely would not have recognized it as such at the time. When my dad, a carpenter, became disabled with debilitating depression, it shook our world. Household income plummeted. Stress levels skyrocketed. Mom and Dad argued constantly about money and about the cause of Dad's troubles. Mom accusing him of laziness, born-again Dad accusing her of bringing God's wrath on the family through her occasional use of foul language. True. One thing was clear. My little brother and I lost the stable family life we'd taken for granted, and to some extent it created a wedge with our extended family, some of whom didn't want to associate with a brother or brother-in-law with mental health problems. In many respects, it broke the spirit of our family. We were now forever different. But economically, though we faced hardship, we endured for two reasons. First, Mom went to work on an assembly line at a Generac plant, building generators, and later worked in other factories or cleaning the homes of wealthy people. The pay wasn't great, but it was significant to us. In addition, our country granted us a lifeline through the Social Security disability benefits for which my dad now qualified. Therein lies the equity, as those benefits, along with my mom's hard work, kept our family from falling into poverty. Our family was in need, and our nation saw that and showed that it valued families facing such hardship by providing us that lifeline. The amount provided made a big difference. It didn't relieve all the stress and fear, but it relieved enough of it to give us hope. Our nation didn't require my family to prove its worthiness. It decided that simply by being Americans facing these economic challenges, we were worthy of assistance. My dad became disabled in the mid-1960s, prior to the anti-government, anti-tax movement that began in the late 70s, early 80s, and continues today among many lawmakers. Social Security disability benefits still exist. They're called SSI now. But some Americans and American politicians still treat applicants for those benefits and for other assistance programs with suspicion. They must be cheating. They're not deserving. The early 80s brought the advent of inequitable economic policy. You might recall the Laffer curve, an economic theory, but there was nothing funny about the Laffer curve. The theory that tax cuts for the wealthy would lift people from poverty better than any government benefit. Of course, that theory has been proven time and again to be an abject failure. It simply lines the pockets of the already wealthy. Yet some leaders keep bringing it up, like an auto manufacturer who intentionally uses faulty parts in car production year after year. In the past several years, we've also seen a resurgence of inequitable social policy, most recently evident on the front page of yesterday's Des Moines Register, which highlighted the governor's most recent attack on the rights of trans Iowans. Yet another foul attempt to deny their very existence under law. And of course, inequitable social policy leads ultimately to inequitable economic outcomes for those impacted. Now here, in this place, and among others, we continue to fight for equity for all. Our church will once again host the Trans Lives Festival. We will continue to fight for economic justice through our involvement in Amos and otherwise. And as reflected in the proposed UUA Article 2 bylaws, we UUs will continue to declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We come now to the offering. Our Faith and Action partners this year are Free Store, which helps provide household items to families recovering from domestic violence and other trauma, and the Iowa Trans Mutual Aid Fund, which supports trans and gender diverse Iowans as they access gender affirming care. Our congregation is an interdependent web. No member stands alone. Each of us is a network of relationships with other networks of relationship. We who are gathered here bring different gifts, experiences, perspectives, talents, skills, resources, passions, interests, sensitivities, and styles. Each of us depends on all of us, and all of us depend on each of us. It is the joy of life to be connected, to give of our uniqueness and our resources, to be enlarged through connection, and to give our lives a wider and deeper meaning. The offering expresses and celebrates our mutual dependence. Therefore, let us gratefully give and gratefully receive. Our offertory music will be performed by Bruce Martin, Chrissy William, Tyler Kalina, and Kirk Martin.
Words of Reverend Mark Morrison Reed from the back of our hymnal. The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. End quote. So let us unveil those bonds that do connect us, and together let our vision widen, our strength be renewed. We live in a time of great polarization, and the political polarization is itself an outcome of the income and wealth inequality. On November 2nd, 1980, my daughter Morgan was born. She was born into a country that certainly had poverty, but did not see the sort of wealth disparities we have now. 2 days after she was born, there was the 1980 presidential election, and Ronald Reagan won it. Over the course of her life, and she turned 43 last November, there's been a massive transfer of wealth to the wealthy. In 1979, the poorer half earned 20% of the nation's pre-tax income. By 2014, just 13%. If the U.S. had the same income distribution that it had in 1979, each family in the bottom 80% of the income distribution would have $11,000 more per year in income, $11,000. From 1947 until 1979, we all grew. For the bottom 20%, income rose 116%. For the second quintile, income rose 100%. For the middle quintile, income rose 111%. For the fourth quintile, income rose 114%. For the top 20%, income rose 99%. So all the quintiles rose a fairly similar amount. But the bottom 20%, by a small margin, grew most of all, and the top 20%, by a small margin, grew least of all. That was during the 32 years from 1947 to 1979. But from 79 until 2007, it was a completely different story. In those 28 years, bottom 20% rose 15%, second quintile 22%, third quintile 23%, fourth 33%, and the top 20% income rose 95%. In 1980, the richest 1% of people got 8% of all the income. 8 times the average income would seem to be plenty. Who could want more than that? Surely that's more than enough. But in 2011, the richest 1% brought home 20% of all income. During the 1950s and 60s, CEOs of major American companies took home 25 to 30 times the wages of their typical worker. In 1980, the big company CEO took home roughly 40 times. By 1990, it was 100 times. And by 2007, CEO pay packages had ballooned to about 350 times what the typical worker earned. Now, modern life is tough, and living the way that we do is hard on people. Anxiety, depression, unsure friendship, consumerism, lack of community. Not all of that would go away if suddenly, magically tomorrow, all income and wealth distribution were at 1979 proportions again. Now, I need to say that I'm always suspicious of any scenario invoked with "if suddenly, magically tomorrow," because there are no magic wands, and how we get somewhere is always going to be a huge part of what it means to be there. So what would it take? It would take some massive programs to create more jobs, bills to ensure that those jobs paid well, lots of aid and assistance like what we saw during the pandemic, only more, and to pay for it all a progressive income tax, the likes of which we did have in this country in the 1950s. The 1950s, the top marginal tax rate was 92% for a few years. Top marginal tax rate is now 37%. It's been in the 30s or even briefly as low as 28% ever since the Reagan administration. But back during the Eisenhower administration, it was 92%, then came down to 91% and stayed there through 1963. In 1963, for a single filer, any income above $200,000 was taxed at a 91% rate. That was 60 years ago, and general cost of living then was about a tenth of what it is today. So $200,000 then is about equivalent to $2 million now. Imagine taxing all income above $2 million at 91%. What is actually much harder to imagine is our Congress approving such a change. It would take a huge and drastic popular movement voting in very different representatives. The building of that movement would involve substantial attitude shifts in the whole population. It would take a moral awakening of mass numbers of people to really care about the well-being of everyone. And if that happened, we would already be in a very different world, quite apart from the effects of whatever legislation we would then be able to pass. Just living in a world where most people really cared about the well-being of all people would itself go a long way to easing the enemies of modern life: anxiety, depression, unsure friendship, consumerism, lack of community. The state of huge disparities of income and the even huger disparities of wealth make everything that's tough about modern life worse. What may be an even bigger factor is the practical political reality that we live in a country that allowed this to happen, that has been voting it in ever since my daughter was born, and is largely unmotivated to rectify it. I, for one, veer between anger and sadness at this reality. There are a lot of different ways to measure inequality, the top X% versus the bottom Y%, but for any X or Y that we might choose, it reveals about the same trends and about the same differences between nations. One common metric, which the UN uses, is the ratio of income at the 80th percentile to the income that's at the 20th percentile, that ratio of 80th to 20th percentile. In the US, that ratio is, as of 2022, at 8.6. It's been running at about that for over a decade, though during the pandemic, we had a temporary drop down to 7.1. Canada, Japan, and most of Europe are below 5. When this 80th percentile to 20th percentile ratio is less than 5, then we find a society generally maintaining some shared assumptions about wealth and about each other. Roughly, when that ratio is about 5 or less, the attitude of the populace will resemble something like this: if there are somewhat wealthier folks among us, that's okay. I can accept that some people are luckier, or they're more skillful at work that society prizes, or they're more driven to work hard and they end up wealthier. And that's fine. That's as it should be. The relatively wealthy serve as a reminder to me of what good schooling and hard work and a little luck might make available to my children. If the town doctor has a big house on a hill, that's okay. He's smart and he had a lot of training and he's using that to help us when we get sick, so more power to him. Maybe my kid can get a scholarship and become a doctor. That kind of thinking was still pretty much the largely unspoken norm on the day 43 years ago when I first held my newborn daughter in my arms. But that attitude loses purchase. It begins to slip away if the rich-poor gap grows too large. That outlook that prevailed through my growing up and my parents' life up until 1980 has now come to seem quaint, an echo of a bygone time. Few, it seems, think like that anymore. We will further explore what that means after our interlude. A certain outlook about wealth was widely shared in the world I grew up in, and then things changed during the time of my daughter's growing up. Two key features of the old outlook were, one, that higher levels of wealth were attainable by those who weren't already rich, and two, those who had wealth deserved it. Those two features are connected, for when upper-class wealth seems attainable, when the perception of most people is that anyone with the right combination of talent, drive, and luck can become upper class, then those who do make it to society's top wealth echelons are presumed to more or less deserve it. But when the gap becomes as enormous as it has in the US, the folks at the bottom and the middle can no longer see the wealth of the ones at the top as either attainable or deserved. By the time my little girl was graduating from college in 2000, the world she was commencing into had become profoundly different from the one she was born into. The country had become a place where we could no longer feel we were all in this together. Now, I know that the idea that there once was, up until 1980, a halcyon time of general social solidarity overlooks the deep racism that has divided our country throughout its history. I know that given the horrors of Jim Crow segregation, gauzy, nostalgic impressions of togetherness are delusional. Even so, whites could see rich whites as attainable, and blacks could see wealthier blacks as attainable. But in this century, even that has fallen apart. There is an argument that we should be concerned with poverty, but not with inequality. It's our business as a society to make sure everybody has enough, this argument goes, but not our business how much more than enough the rich have. Here's the thing. What we want is to care and be cared for. What we want and need is to be in relations of care. And when that need is not met, it makes anxiety, depression, and social alienation more likely. Societally, when inequality becomes great, we lose the sense of community, lose the sense that we're all in this together. Researchers into social health typically measure it as an amalgam of 10 features. The lower the rates of homicide, obesity, teenage births, infant mortality, imprisonment rates, and mental illness, including drug and alcohol addiction, and the higher the rates of life expectancy, children's educational performance, social mobility, and level of trust, then the higher a nation's societal health. Those 10 factors. Using that definition of societal health, researchers have then found that a country's wealth does not correlate with its social health. A country may be rich, medium, poor, or extremely poor, less than $10,000 per person per year, $10,000. Except in extremely poor nations, more wealth has no effect on social health. Equality, however, does correlate with social health. Countries with high inequality, whether rich or poor, have low social health. Countries with low inequality, whether rich or poor, have high social health. The US is quite wealthy, but on the measure of social health, we're doing worse than most countries that have only half that much per person income. After meeting a certain minimum, more wealth does not do us any good. But equality does. In statisticians' terms, the mean income, as long as it's above $10,000, doesn't matter. It's the standard deviation that matters. Social health means a better quality of life for us all. Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pinkett write in their book, The Spirit Level, Why Greater Equality Makes Societies Stronger. The evidence shows that reducing inequality is the best way of improving the quality of the social environment, and so the real quality of life for all of us, and that includes the better off. A relatively equal society where the ratio of the 80th percentile to the 20th percentile is less than 5 can sustain a shared understanding among its members. But if, as in the US, that ratio is close to 9, there's a disconnect. We lose the shared understanding of the legitimacy of things. The wealthy are beyond attainability and beyond any credible story of deservingness. We lose the sense that we're in this together. The wealthy become them, and they don't care about us, so we don't care about them. Anomie and division set in, anger and alienation become the social mood. Sensing the resentment of most of society, the wealthy in turn retreat behind gated communities, which further increases the disconnect. We begin to believe the game is rigged. We don't have a chance. And when we believe that, we become more likely to behave in ways that make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Rich and poor alike feel the division, the disconnect. The result is that phenomenon I mentioned. Everything that's tough about modern life is exacerbated. Higher levels of depression, higher levels of consuming things that aren't good for us, from drugs to alcohol to junk foods to mindless TV shows to mindless consumer products. As I wrote in my column for this month's issue of Connecting, when you compare nation to nation, there's no correlation between wealth and life expectancy or mortality. No correlation. Rich countries have about the same life expectancies and mortality rates as relatively poor countries until you get to the really poor end of the spectrum. As long as a nation has per person income above about $10,000 a year, further increases do nothing to increase life expectancy. That's the nation-to-nation comparison. But when we do a zip code to zip code comparison, we get a different picture. The poorer zip codes have higher mortality than the richer zip codes. If you took several of the poorest zip codes, created a new island in the Pacific, put them all there, maintained their per-person incomes as they were, made a new island nation of them, they would have decreased mortality. They'd be fine. But because they live near the wealthier areas, they perceive the difference. They see all around them the inescapable fact that they live in a society that is set up to work for others, but not for them. They are reminded daily that they are not in a society of mutual care. And that wears them down much more than relative material deprivation. Wilkinson and Pickett write, "At the pinnacle of human material and technical achievement, we find ourselves anxiety-ridden, prone to depression, worried about how others see us, unsure of our friendships, driven to consume, and with little or no community life." Wilkinson and Pickett go on to note the unease that we feel about the loss of social values and the way we're drawn into the pursuit of material gain is often experienced as if it were a purely private ambivalence which cuts us off from others. As voters, we've lost sight of any collective belief that society could be different. Instead of a better society, the only thing almost everyone strives for is to be better in their own positions as individuals within the existing society. End quote. A complex web of interrelated factors has brought us to this place, and growing income inequality is a key node in that web. It fosters a sense of divide. If we're going to get back to a sense of common good, where political differences are differences of strategy for promoting general welfare rather than the drawing of enemy lines to delineate who must be defeated, then it will be necessary for us to reduce income inequality. Equality has benefits that show up all over. A well-controlled study of over 1,600 players in 29 teams over a 9-year period found that Major League Baseball teams with smaller income differences among the players do significantly better than the more unequal teams. When people feel like they stand on equal footing with their neighbors or their teammates, there's a cohesion that lifts spirits, that heals wounds, and improves performance. Unitarian Universalists care about our world, and it's clear now that further improvements in the quality of life no longer depend on further economic growth. The issue is now community and how we relate to each other. The issue is building a world in which most of us care about the well-being of all of us. The issue is not only at the economic level, but at the spirit level. The wound is to our spirits, and yet wounded as they are, the resolve to heal must also come from our spirits. The religious community is essential, as Mark Morrison Reed said, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens, and our strength is renewed. May it be so. Amen.
Please rise as you are willing and able, and join me in singing hymn number 1017 in the Teal hymnal, Building a New Way.
We are
Please say with me our unison chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalices or candles at home as well. May we live a life that is not in vain. May our works and deeds have meaning. May the path that our ancestors tread, that we follow and leave for others, lead to true equity and justice.
If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have known comfort, go and share it with others. And if you have found love, then take it forth to build a more loving world. Go in peace.
Wrong one.